friends, in our time together, I want us to think through the factors we should consider in selecting a low D whistle. So this conversation you might think is targeted to people buying their first whistle, but it's really targeted to all of us, because once you have your first whistle, you're going to want another. Anyway, in our previous video, I mentioned that money is not the primary consideration in deciding what whistle to purchase. I don't mean it's not a concern. I mean it's not the first concern. So you want to decide on a range of qualities you want in a whistle. You want to decide what whistles meet those factors, those criteria, and then you start looking at money. So let's look at the factors, and then we'll talk minimally about money, but that's more another conversation later about how much certain whistles cost. I really appreciate folks in the community who have been bringing this up, and I'll mention this at the end, but I want you to tell us in the comments what factors went into your choosing the whistle you own. What whistle did you decide? I know what whistles a number of you have, because you've told us, but what factors went into that, and which whistles met those criteria? You see, saying this and sharing this with the community is going to help everyone in making their own choices easier. So, when you're purchasing a low D whistle, any whistle for that matter, you're purchasing an instrument. And instruments have certain qualities about them. The way one manufacturer makes an instrument, that same style of instrument made by another manufacturer has slightly different qualities because they're targeting different segments of the market. And that's why it's perfectly fine for you to prefer a whistle other than the one I own. Or it's perfectly fine for you to prefer the one I own. And it's perfectly fine for me to want more than one, because they all do slightly different things. But here are the factors that we need to start considering. Actually, before you start making a list of all the factors, I want you to just listen to people playing. Go to YouTube and listen to people playing their whistles. Listen to the professionals, like the different manufacturer websites. All have links to people simply playing the whistle, the way the whistle was intended to sound and be played. Listen to that. Take some notes. Oh, I liked the resonance of those low notes. I liked how it didn't seem a lot of air was required in the upper octave, or I wasn't real thrilled with the little bit of chirpiness on that transition. Listen, listen, listen. Don't start with reviews. You need to decide the kind of things you like before you jump into reviews. Reviews are ways to compare specific instruments. So, let's get into some of the questions that we need to consider, because, do you want a clean whistle sound, bright, mellow, breathy, chirpy? People have different preferences, and you're going to have preferences yourself. Do you want a soft whistle so that you're sitting around the house, you don't feel like you're being loud? Do you want a louder volume whistle? Are you going to be playing in a group and you want to meet somewhere in the middle? Are you playing solos and you want to stand out from the crowd? What are you after? Write this stuff down. So, here's some criteria. Think through the tone. As you listen to whistles, the videos from manufacturers, or just find other videos, write down what you like about the tone. Oh, I like the mellow resonance. I like the softness. I like the brightness. I like that little bit of chirp. Oh, I like that breathiness in it. Write down the qualities you like in the tone of a whistle and write down the ones you don't like as much. You shouldn't go straight to looking at someone else's, even my preference for what I want in a whistle or someone else, no matter how long they've been playing, because what they want in a whistle might not be what you want in a whistle. So, do you have a preference? This is another factor. Do you have a preference for the material from which the body of the whistle and the mouthpiece are made? A resin body to the whistle tends to create a slightly more muted tune. There are a few manufacturers, Susato in particular, that have a little more brightness, but for the most part, a resin body creates a more mellow tone. Metal creates a little bit more brightness, and different metals create different qualities of resonance with a whistle. We don't want to get into that too much, but listen to see what whistles you like. So, do you care about the amount of air a whistle requires? I like a whistle that blows very easily from the bottom to the top. That means sometimes that whistle can be a little more sensitive to overblowing. But I like the freedom. To me, it feels like it gives me a little more ability for expression. You might want a little bit more air requirements because you feel like that gives you more control. Different people, different whistles. Another factor to consider, what about the hole pattern? I have my Howard right here and hold it into the light. My holes are in a straight line, and it's a traditional hole pattern off of a low D whistle. You can buy whistles that have slightly offset hole patterns. I didn't want that. So that went on my list of I want traditional hole patterns, and I don't want a whistle that's offset. There is even a manufacturer that does what they call chimney holes, and they've put the holes of the low D whistle very close together, like a high D whistle. I didn't want that either. Even though I'm excited about that particular whistle, it's not what I wanted. But you have to think through these and write down what you want. You're fine-tuning and narrowing the field. It's like you're buying a car. Do you want a tunable whistle or a non-tunable whistle? Permit me to answer this one for you. You want a tunable whistle even if you're not going to play with other people. The reason you want a tunable whistle is they're way easier to clean. It's harder, a lot harder, to thoroughly clean a non-tunable whistle, even if the whole thing's made of metal. So trust me on that one. Think through these things. Think through these characteristics. Write them all down. Rank them in importance. Once you do that, you're going to say, here are my characteristics. Now it's time to start looking around. Go to Howard's website, for example. They have a link to what they call a whistle finder. And it shows this little thing with drawers of different whistles. You've got to scroll down, and then it lets you filter. I want a tunable whistle. I want one that's made from the following material. I want a low D. And then it shows you a number of pages worth of options and a few of the characteristics. I'm working on crafting a chart. Man, I'm not far enough along, so I'm going to point you to the one that Howard has made. And you could find others as well, but Howard's is pretty all-inclusive. From there, you're going to know These are some whistles that meet some of my major criteria. Then start writing those whistles down and then listen to people reviewing them, keeping in mind the factors you want. I want standard hull pattern. I want tunable. I want a metal body. I'm okay with a hard resin mouthpiece or a metal mouthpiece. I want a mellow tone or I want a bright tone. I want minimal air requirements. You've got those things down. You start listening to the reviews. Don't adopt the reviewers' factors, okay? Listen to them and they'll say, well, this has a lot of air requirements. And if you want a whistle that has minimal air requirements, then scratch that one off your list. See, you make your factors and then you narrow it down, okay? And that's how that's going to work. Think, decide, take notes, and you're going to narrow it down to probably half a dozen to 10 whistles. Trust me. You don't need to ask me how I know that. Now you can say, oh, I like that. The Chieftain V5 and the MK Pro, just an example. Now look up a review where people are comparing those two whistles. And then maybe you like the Howard as well. So compare the Chieftain and the Howard after you compare the Chieftain and the MK Pro. And remember, reviewers have prejudices. So listen, does that whistle they're talking about, do they reference the factors you care about with tone quality, with the way it's made, with the fingering, with the sound level, with any other factor you're concerned about? That's going to narrow your list down further. You now have a smallish group of whistles. At this point, it's almost a coin flip. This is when you could say, how much money is that whistle? And you could rank them based on how much money they are. And then you could recompare them to see if you'd be just as happy buying the cheapest out of the lot that all meet the criteria that you want in a whistle. So that's the start of this conversation. We'll say more later. But for now, these are the main factors for you to consider in selecting a short list of whistles from which to choose. And if you get a short list of whistles and you want to send a note to the group, reply to this video and say, hey friends, I want a whistle that meets these criteria, and I'm thinking of these 3 whistles. Anybody have experience with any of them? And I'll ask everybody, or people will just reply. So it's why we have community like this, to learn together, but to help each other. So anyway, use these criteria to create your own filter system first based on your preferences for an instrument, for a low D whistle. Then compare them based on reviews, based on your criteria, but listen to other people, listen to people playing these, and then rank them on how much money they are, and rank them in your head on which one you really want. Then you'll know, or then you could flip a coin. I hope this is a lot of help. If you've got questions, reply to this email, and I and others chime in and help out. And in a near future conversation, we're going to talk about when to upgrade our whistles. So I hope this is a lot of help, my friends. Until then, this is Scott Shade. Happy low D whistling and happy low D whistle choosing.